Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating, highly contemplative source text titled, "The Holy Mass Was Never Meant to Entertain Us." We're going to impartially break down the specific theological arguments this text makes about the Catholic Mass. It's an explainer that truly gets right to the heart of how ancient religious rituals view themselves, especially when you put them right up against our fast-paced modern culture. We'll be looking directly at the claims the source makes about reverence, the actual purpose of liturgy, and what happens when an ancient tradition pushes back against our everyday desire to just, well, sit back and be entertained.
So, to start us off, the text poses this huge question. Are we an audience or are we worshipers? It's a pretty powerful hook, isn't it? I mean, think about it. In our modern world, whenever we gather in large groups, whether it's for a concert, a movie, or a big keynote speech, we are almost always an audience. We sit back, we expect a performance, and then we evaluate how well it kept our attention. But the text we're examining today actively subverts that modern expectation when it comes to a religious gathering. It argues that treating a congregation like an audience fundamentally misunderstands the entire point of the event.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Entertainment versus worship. Two completely different mindsets.
There is a really stark contrast being made here. On one hand, you have the trap that the text argues the modern mind constantly falls into, expecting performance, personal expression, and cultural trends. It's that familiar idea that a service should mirror what's popular right now, or maybe focus on the charisma of the people up front. But on the other hand, the source defines the Mass entirely differently. It calls it the sacred representation of Christ's sacrifice on Calvary. According to the document, this is the greatest act of love the world has ever known. So it is not a new performance, it is an ancient, sacred event being made present again. The text actually explicitly warns against turning this profound act into some kind of stage for personal expression.
So the absolutely crucial point here comes down to a plain, hard-hitting statement from the author. It says, "We are not an audience seeking to be entertained. We are worshipers standing before the living God." And this represents a complete shift in posture. Think about the difference in that mindset for a second. An audience focuses completely on the self, right? Am I bored? Am I moved? Am I being entertained right now? But a worshiper, as defined by this text, focuses entirely on the divine. The gathering simply isn't about human affirmation, it's about standing in the presence of God. It's a massive paradigm shift from passive consumption to active, humble reverence.
Moving right along to Section 2, the purpose of the liturgy, lifting hearts to God. Sacred silence, prayers, chant, incense, reverent gestures. Let's be honest, if you were designing a show for modern entertainment, you probably wouldn't rely on long stretches of sacred silence or ancient chants. But the text explains that these physical and sensory elements are not there to provide aesthetic pleasure or to put on a good show. Not at all. They have one singular, unified purpose: to lift hearts and minds to God. The smell of the incense, the rhythm of those prayers, the physical bowing or kneeling, every single piece is a tool carefully designed to point the worshiper away from the loud distractions of the world and directly toward the divine.
All right, Section 3, Pope Benedict's warning. Basically, do not mirror the culture. And this brilliantly illustrates the real climax of the Catholic view on reverence, as presented in our source. Pope Benedict XVI is quoted saying, "The Holy Mass was never meant to entertain us or mirror the culture. It exists to offer the holy sacrifice of Calvary and draw our attention to God." That quote perfectly encapsulates everything we've been looking at. In this view, the refusal to mirror the culture is a feature. It's not a bug. If the culture is totally obsessed with fast-paced entertainment, the Mass, according to this perspective, absolutely must be an antidote to that, not an imitation of it. It's a deliberate stepping out of ordinary time and cultural trends into something eternal.
Which brings us to Section 4, Heaven Touching Earth, Encountering Christ. The source defines the Holy Mass with this absolutely incredible phrase, heaven touching earth. According to the Catholic belief described here, the Mass is the literal place where Christ gives himself to the worshipers in the Holy Eucharist. Now, when you understand the event through that specific theological lens, that the divine is physically, literally intersecting with the mortal right there in the room, then the absolute insistence on reverence makes complete logical sense within that framework. The text argues that every single word, every tiny gesture, and every moment must be carefully preserved to help people encounter Christ, making absolutely sure that nothing distracts from him. Because of this, the text calls for a very specific attitude from anyone attending. It asks for humility, for deep recollection, and for immense gratitude. The source paints a super vivid picture. When you are at Mass, you are meant to understand yourself as standing right at the foot of the cross, and simultaneously before the throne of God. It is a strict call to never lose a sense of awe before the Blessed Sacrament. It's just a really powerful reminder that within this tradition, the stakes of the ritual are considered incredibly high, far, far beyond a simple weekly community check-in. We're going to conclude today with the final prayer exactly as it appears in the text. Lord, increase our reverence for your Holy Mass, deepen our love for the Eucharist, and keep our hearts always fixed on you. Amen. And I want to leave you with a provocative thought based on everything we've explored in this explainer today. Regardless of your own personal beliefs, I want you to think about how profoundly a gathering changes when the people in the room shift from an audience mindset to a worshiper mindset. How does completely removing the demand to be entertained alter our human capacity for awe, for silence, and for true reverence? It's a totally fascinating lens through which to view ancient traditions in our modern, hyper-fast-paced world. Thank you so much for joining me, for learning with me, and for diving deep into this topic today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.